Well, hey everyone. I wanted to make a video showing how we put together all of our sets for our weekend services, our Ableton Live sets. This is a bit of a follow-up video to a video that I made showing how we modify and manipulate the tracks that we purchase from multitracks.com, a loop community, or the ones that we make on our own, and we add our own clicks and our own guides and pads and things like that. Essentially what I'm going to be doing in this video is showing you how to take all of those that you've modified, put them together in a format that is very user-friendly and will help you to go through the flow of a service, either for one of our weekend services or for a special worship service. Just like in the last video, in this video I'm going to be talking about a lot of things regarding Ableton Live, and this sort of makes the assumption that you know a thing or two about it. If there's anything that I'm talking about that you don't understand, make sure you write it down and go and look it up. You can go to Ableton's website and they have incredible forums, or you can just check out YouTube. That's essentially where I learned how to do all of this. So let's get started. First and foremost, just like in the other video, I talked about how I use a template, right? I have an Ableton Live template, this live set that I've saved, that has basically everything in it that I'm going to need to put together a set or to manipulate one of our sets of tracks. I've got these groups set up, different audio and MIDI channels with effects like peak limiters, MIDI instruments for our clicks and guides. Also effects for our pads. That also has all of my outputs set up for how we bus all of our different instruments out, which I'll get to in a moment. It's also got a bunch of MIDI mapping set up for our drum triggers so our drummers can fire off the tracks, and then a number of key maps set up as well. That was what we were doing before we had the triggers, and in the event the trigger doesn't work, you can always make use of that. So I don't want to mess up my live template, right? I like my live template. I don't want to accidentally save some stuff in it and then carry gigabytes of files to other live sets. So the first thing that I want to do is just file, save live set as, and then I'm going to make sort of a duplicate using this existing template so that way I don't mess with my original template. So I have a folder on my computer that's linked up through Dropbox that will sync all of our live sets and our tracks to our track computers at our different campuses. And so that's what this folder is. You can see the little shared icon there. And I basically just make the tracks according to what campus and also the date. So currently we've got 2 campuses. Soon we'll be launching our 3rd. And so I just want to start with a baseline, right? I'm going to start with our Cherry Hill campus. It doesn't really matter which one you start with, but I'm just going to make a live set, call it Cherry Hill for September 25th, 2016. All right, and that'll save the project folder and the live set in there. And now you can see it is Cherry Hill 9/25/16 saved in the folder. So now that I've got that saved, I want to start importing my songs, and I want to make sure that I lay everything out according to my flow of service. So if I look at Planning Center, we use Planning Center, and it should have everything that you need on there. There are certain aspects of a weekend service or worship service that have to do with the band. So our what to expect portion here, I make a specific scene for that so that we can get ready. Also our sort of this whole area here, these 3 points can be made into one scene. Also the end of service is made into one scene as well. So I'm going to just start putting this together and pulling in our 4 songs and show you how I arrange those. Essentially, just to give you a picture of where I'm going, everything is going to end up here in session view, right? Some guys prefer sessions, some prefer arrangement, which if you hit tab, you can go back and forth between the two, or these buttons here. It really doesn't make a difference how you do it. I've just found that it's a bit simpler for people who maybe aren't used to using DAWs or maybe would get a little confused. This way we can just fire things off scene by scene, and it just keeps it simple. So I edit all of our tracks in arrangement view. I'm going to drag them all into arrangement view, and then sort of catalog them in session view, assigning each song to a scene, so that for our drummers all they have to do is hit the play button or the key mapping and MIDI mapping, and it'll just make life a lot easier. Additionally, if I had a series of tracks in here, the way that we lay them out, they would just lay on top of one another, and that would be like 4 songs playing all at the same time, which would sound awful. So rather than having people scroll for days to see different tracks, if we just lay them on top of one another here in session view, it's a lot cleaner. So if you want to debate the pros and cons of either one, we can do that at some point, but just so you know, this is where we're going to end up. So, like I said, I edit all of my tracks in arrangement view, so I'm going to pull them into here to get started. On my places here, I've added a folder for my external hard drive, and so it makes it a lot easier for me to just get to the files that I need. If you didn't have that folder there, you can just hit add folder and add it. Or you can go into Finder and pull it in that way. So either way works. My first song is Lion and the Lamb by Bethel, and so I'm going to basically just go and find that and pull it in. And this is the first thing that can get a bit confusing. When you save a live set, it's going to save an actual ALS file. That's your Ableton Live Set file. It's also going to save a project folder. And when you look at the live set and the project folder inside of this file viewer of Ableton, they both have arrows next to them. And so it makes it a little confusing. You may see this folder and think this is what I can drag in, but that's not actually what you drag in. You don't drag in the project file. You want to make sure you pull in the actual ALS file. So whether that's from Finder or from inside of Ableton, you want to make sure you pull in the ALS file. The ALS file will subsequently pull in all of your multitracks and samples and project info. So I'm going to grab this and just drag it and drop it. Depending on the size of the file, it'll take a moment as it's opening all the different samples and buffering them. So I'm just going to drop this in here, and then you'll see it load up. Now, like I mentioned before, I use the same template for everything. So you'll notice very quickly that there's 2 of everything, right? I've got my click folder, my pad, my outputs folder. I've got all of that in here twice. I do this so that every song looks the same, and it's just easier to manipulate and work with. But essentially, I don't need multiple instances of this, right? They do all the exact same thing. And this is where session view gets a lot nicer. Instead of having, 4 different sets of these folders, I can just take all of the data, all of the scenes, and put them under one set of folders, and it'll look a lot cleaner, right? I can delete these guys once I put it into session view, and then all of my files are right here on top of one another. It's very clean, very easy to understand and work with. So this is where I want to get all of my clips. So essentially, I'm going to highlight these and just drag them over, right? I could click and drag and move them around here as much as I want to. In the same way, if I just click and hold them and press tab, it'll let me drop them into my session view. Fun fact, you can't actually drag a folder, right? If I highlighted this folder, I can't just drag it somewhere. It won't let me. You have to drag a file. So either you can open up the folder and highlight all of them and pull them in, or if it's collapsed, you can highlight the folder, the group, with normal files, and it'll pull the folder over, as you'll see in a moment. And in order to get that folder to show up, right? My folder is over here. In order to get that folder and those tracks to show up, I have to put these clips in this set of folders instead of this set of folders, right? I have to put them in the one that they correspond to in session view in order for the line in the lamb group to show up. So you'll see when I drop these here, now the line in the lamb group and all of those tracks came over with me. If I had dropped them here, there is no place for the line in the lamb folder, so it wouldn't have come over. So now that they're over here, I can take them, my two MIDI clips, my click and my guide, and then also my audio pad, and just drag them over to the exact same ones over here. This is where all of these things are going to line up. And then I don't need these anymore, right? I can get rid of them. You'll see these guys in a moment are going to disappear, but I don't need duplicates of these. I already have them here. So I can just highlight and delete. And now this is going to look a heck of a lot cleaner. So I've got each folder is going to show up here for each song. I've got all of my MIDI clips and my audio clips, and they're just going to line up on top of one another. But you'll quickly notice they're all gone from arrangement view, right? All of these clips are gone, and you may be thinking they're not going to work. I can't use them. But that's one of the funny things about Ableton. It uses arrangement view and session view differently, and you can have the same clip in session view and in arrangement view, and it'll play them completely differently and modify them differently. So you don't have to worry that they're gone from here. They're represented in session view, and they will still work. So I'm going to keep adding my songs here, and I'm going to keep doing the same thing and then lay things out here in a moment. So my next song, if I can get over to Planning Center, Always Enough by Carrie Job. You'll notice my folders are laid out very clean. I talked about that a little bit in my other video. Very easy to get to. I can see all the information that I need, what key it's in, the beats per minute. So have to encourage you to arrange things in a way that makes sense like that as well. Otherwise, you just drive yourself crazy trying to find, is this the right version of it or is that the right version of it? If you've got your files laid out correctly in your folder, it'll just make your life a whole lot easier. So, dropping this stuff in, it's buffering these samples, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing that I did before, right? Can't pull the group over, so I highlight everything, click, press tab, and I just drop them in. And now the Always Enough folder came along with me, and I just keep moving stuff, right? Now I'm going to put this in the third scene, and I'll show you why in a moment. Then again, delete these. Now this is starting to look really clean, very nice. Again, the click, guide, and pad are gone from here, but they're still represented in session view. So nothing to worry about. The reason I separated those by a scene, we do something where our worship leader kind of reaches out to the congregation, tells everyone our service is going to be 70 minutes long. We're going to sing a few more songs, watch a couple of videos. Our lead pastor is going to speak. So I have to put a scene in there for that. What we always do with our What to Expect is that's a bit of a transitional moment for us. So during our What to Expect, I want Ableton to get me into the key of D for the next song, right? I'm coming from A, I'm going into D, and this song is 78 beats per minute. So I don't want to stay at 90. I want the click in my ear to get me into 78. So that's what I'm going to use the What to Expect for. So if I go over here to live, I can put that information in and put a click and a pad in here to help me transition. So you can right click or hit rename, or you can hit Command R, and then I can type this stuff in. The next song is 78 beats per minute. It's 4/4. And then I want this pad in D. I'm just going to use the same one. If I hold Option, click this, I can just make a duplicate. So now I've got D here. This is my MIDI clip, just playing from this MIDI instrument all of my clicks. So I can just drop one of those in here. And now when I hit the second scene, it'll play a click at 78 beats per minute, and then it's very faint. You probably can't hear it on this video, but there's a pad playing in the key of D, so that's going to help me to transition. It's going to help the band and the congregation to transition while I'm telling everyone what to expect. And this sort of helps me transition in this video to talking about using these scenes, right? I've got all of these tracks that are going to be laid out here. I need to name these scenes so that if the drummer needs to hit a button or as they're triggering things, they know what they're about to trigger and what we're playing, and also give Ableton information so that it can change its tempo and play the songs at the correct tempo. What I like to do is I like to put all of this information, the beats per minute and also the time signature, inside the name of this group, right? These groups are saved in the ALS files I'm dragging in. So again, rename this, it makes it editable, and then I can just Command C to copy it. Go over here, right, Command R lets me rename, and I'll add Line of the Lamb, 90 beats per minute, 4/4. Same thing here, Command R, Command C, Command R, Command V. And there we go. Now I've got my first song. You can hear this start.
1, 2, intro, 2, 3, 4.
I can hit the number 2 on the keyboard, and that'll fire off my second track. And that changed my tempo for me. And it's getting me into a different key so that I'm prepared for the next song. And then when I hit number 3,
1, 2, guitar, 2, 3, 4.
right? So that's how I'm using those transitional moments to get me into the next song. You could do something different if you'd like, but for our purposes, here at Kingsway, that's how we do it. So I'm just going to keep adding some songs. I've got Oh Lord, You're Beautiful. This is actually a track that we made, but it is the Jesus Culture version of the song. So you'll notice there's less tracks overall because, again, we made it. So just a few of them in there. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to put this in the 4th spot now. Right, so it's scene number 4. I'm going to do all the same stuff. Drag this over. Delete these. Copy the name. All right, one more song, and then we can just get to the rest of our service elements. Last thing, I'll Praise the Name by Hillsong. This one, unlike Oh Lord, You're Beautiful, should have a lot of tracks. Hillsong really enjoys all of their keys tracks. So same thing as last time. Highlight everything. Pull it in, line it up with the correct track here, put it in number 5. You can see now, when you add just one song, it's not that crazy, but each subsequent song, you're taking up so much screen real estate with all these extra tracks. Crazy. So there we go. I've got my 4 songs in here, all of their folders with all of their tracks. Some people prefer to put every, rather than having a folder for each song and, drums and bass and guitars in each one, they'll have drums, bass, guitars, and they'll put all of their songs into the same thing. The way my brain works, the way I process information, this just works a lot better for me. So to each their own, but this is the way we do it at Kingsway. So last thing, copy this over here. Great. So I've got my 4 songs in. I've got the what to expect. I'm also just going to turn on, make another one very similar to that what to expect for the meet and greet. Which will be just all of these aspects of our service. So, and what we tend to do after the last song during our celebration moment, meet and greet and whatnot, is we will just tag the previous song. So I'm just going to have all that same information. And this service is going to be a little bit different. Normally what we do is we would just have number 7 ends up being just like the meet and greet is the same as the last song. Our end of service is the same as the first song, and we tag the first song on the way out. But this one, I'll be coming up at the end of the sermon and playing a little bit of something. So I'm pretty sure that's just going to be... I'll call it 72. 72 seems like just a great tempo to do anything. So might as well start with 72. And then I'll add my end of service. My end of service is going to be like the first song. So I'm going to get all that information in here. So now all of my scenes have the correct tempo and time signature information. And every time I fire those scenes, they will change the information in Ableton. And you saw these arrows changing color as I put that information in, designating that they will control Ableton. Now I just need to add all of my pads and clicks into these last 3 service elements. And one note I'll make here, if you're doing just a random song and you don't have a loop for it or any sort of tracks for it, you can just make a normal click and a pad and then do your thing. And so if there's any song that you just want to do without tracks, that's a great way to make it. It's just the same way that we did the what to expect and the same way we're going to do these. So again, for the meet and greet, I'm just tagging the end of the previous song. So I'm going to option click this and copy it. I am going to make sure that all of my clicks are the same. I'm just option clicking and dragging them in. I don't need a guide in here, but I'm just going to get all these lined up. I think the special song I'm going to be doing in D, so might as well put that in there. And then the end of service will be in the same key as the first song. So that's the key of A. Great. So now everything's laid out. Now I need to modify things a little bit. This isn't essential, but it's helpful. These tracks these click tracks are set to loop, right? It's just one measure worth of clicks and it loops indefinitely. And that's great, but you don't want a guide track to loop. Otherwise, at the end of a song, it'll start off by counting you in again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you don't want that. So for all of these guide tracks, I just uncheck loop just to make sure that they're not looping. And then for any of these end of service elements, I like to just make these pads. They're like 20 minutes long, but I like to warp them and loop them just so that they're indefinite. That way, if we were to go on for a long period of time, I wouldn't have to worry about it. You can set your loop points at the beginning and end of the song, or excuse me, of the clip. So I'm just going to do that with these. So now these pads are set to loop rather indefinitely. Great. So at this point, this looks really clean, right? This is much nicer than if I had different click, pad, and outputs for each one of these. That wouldn't make any sense. So now I can start bussing my outputs. Basically, we use 4 different outputs for our tracks. We use our click and guide, goes out to one, all of our percussion, all of our keys and pads, and all of our guitars go out to another. You may do something different if you're at another church. For us, separating these out has been really helpful for our sound men. There are times when I wish that I could have more, but we'll just work with these for now, and maybe in the future add more. But at least they can know what to expect with each of these having their own channel strip on the board. So I want to go into each one of my songs and make sure that all of these instruments are going to these correct outputs. Additionally, I just like putting the outputs on the outside here. It doesn't really matter, but I'm pretty particular. So in order to assign these tracks to different outputs, all you have to do is go down to the audio out here at the bottom of each track. Automatically, they're going to be set to do what the group is doing and go to the master output or wherever the group is set. But I want to send each of them to different places. So you can highlight multiple tracks. And then what I've done is, by putting these at the bottom, that means they're always down here instead of like somewhere in the middle. It's another reason to put the outputs way over on that side. And I named them output, so they're easy to see. But basically, I'm just going to assign my different tracks to different outputs. A lot of times what I do is I'll send the bass to the keys output. We normally aren't going to use a bass, but heaven forbid, we needed to turn it on because someone couldn't make it. The keys output on the soundboard, that channel tends to have much more low end than the guitars. Sound guys tend to take out the low end of the guitars, but a lot of the keys stuff will be like sub-synths, and especially bass synths. So if I'm going to send a bass synth over, I might as well send the bass itself over on the same channel. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense, but it's worked for us thus far. So I'm just taking all of these and assigning them keys, guitars, percussion, click and guide. And I'm going to do that for each individual song. We currently don't use any vocals, so you can just get rid of those. I also made the tracks a little bit wider so that I could see what they say instead of just saying output, because sometimes I'll click the wrong thing and assign everything to the wrong bus output. So again, here's one of those instances where I've got a synth bass. I'm going to send my synth bass out with the keys because the sound guy will hear it and know that it's a synth rather than sending it to the guitars. So that's why I send the bass tracks out that way as well. This one's much faster. And this one will probably take longer. All right, so I'm at a pretty good place right now. I have all of my tracks lined up properly in their groups. It looks clean. I've got all of my clicks set to loop indefinitely. I made sure my guides are not looping indefinitely. I have all of the right pads in all of the right places for each individual service element. I've set my last 3 here. The last couple just to loop indefinitely depending on how I need them to be used. My folders are arranged nicely and everything is bussed appropriately to each one of these output tracks. So I'm in a pretty good place. I'm going to save, right? Just Command S. But one thing I'm not going to do yet is I'm not going to collect all and save, right? Currently, all of these tracks are saved on my hard drive, right? Ableton is just pulling them from my hard drive if I play them, but they're not saved on my computer. And that's fine on my computer, but I need to collect all and save if I want to send the live set to a different computer. That way it will take all of the MIDI and audio information, copy it all into the same folder, and then a Dropbox will sync all of that for me to all of my other track computers, so they will have every single track rather than them just having a .als file and no audio. So collect all and save is really important, but I don't want to do that yet, and here's why. Because I haven't saved anything yet, because I just have a configuration, just a .als file saved, I can make copies of this ALS file for my different campuses and then modify them there without pulling gigabytes of data, right? Track with me here. If I were to collect all and save on CHL and then I were to save that as Glassboro, but let's say, for example, I'm looking at the 25th here. These are all in the same key, which does not help my example. But here's a good example. For the following week, there's a song in 2 different keys. And normally they're close enough, like B and D, I can warp those. But if they're completely the opposite from one another, what happens a lot of times is I will end up having to bounce a completely different set of tracks out and then add them, or there's different service elements or whatever else. But the point is, if I were to collect all and save this Cherry Hill file and then make another Glassboro file and then add more tracks to it, I'm bringing all of that data from Cherry Hill to Glassboro even if I don't need it. I hope that makes sense. Basically, I just want to save this configuration file and then edit each campus's live set before collecting all and saving. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to save live set as, and I'm not going to save it in this Cherry Hill project. I'm going to make a completely different project and just call Glassboro. So now when they look in Dropbox, they will see these two different sets, these two different projects. And again, each project, no files are in them yet as far as the multitracks are concerned. But they could potentially show up with different ones if we were to do a different song, or if I had to pull in different files for one reason or another. So now that I've done that, I can edit Glassboro based on what set they're doing, which is normally exactly the same, but based on the instruments that they have on a weekend, as well as again the keys. So the nice thing is I waited to save Glassboro until after I did all of my audio routing. If I had saved Glassboro before I did all of my audio routing, then I would have had to do that all over again. So that's why that's a good idea. Now if I look at Planning Center again, look at the matrix for the 25th, all the songs are in the same key, A, D, A, and B. So that's great, so I don't have to mess with that. But my bands are going to be different. So I have 2 electric guitars in Cherry Hill, and I only have 1 in Glassboro. And I have to know how these guys play in order to turn things on and off. But that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to go through each one of these and basically turn off things that they don't need. We've got drummers, we've got bass players. I really don't like using acoustic guitar tracks ever. That's just a personal preference. I've got a piano player, and they're just playing piano and not doing the weird keys things in Line of the Lamb. So I'm just going to play it and listen to these different guitar tracks.
1, 2, intro, 2, 3, 4.
Jump ahead here a little bit. So I'm just basically listening to each one. Now I know both of these tracks because I made the track and I know how both of the different guitar parts go. So you have to be really intimately aware of each one of these parts in order to turn stuff on and off for people at different campuses. I know that Rob doesn't want to play a ton of lead stuff while he's singing. I know he wants to play the simpler stuff. So I'm going to give him Guitar 1 and Guitar 2 both have lead stuff on them, but Guitar 1 is definitely much simpler. So I'm going to turn that one off and let him play that stuff, and then let Guitar 2 stay on the track. Do the same thing with Always Enough here. I know that he's not singing this one, and he's going to want to play these lead lines. So if I listen to this.
1, 2, guitar, 2, 3, 4.
He's not going to want to play that.
Bass, 2, 3, 4.
He's going to play those parts, that lead line there. So I've already got that. I've actually already got that turned off, so that's fine. I've got one keys player playing all these pads. I've got a bass player. I'm going to leave the synth bass in because it really helps to fill things out, especially when people are just playing pads. Tambourine effects, that's good. Keep going through here. I know I have a piano player, and I know that I want this pad in there, and I want the strings in there. But I'll bring the piano out, and then for Oh Praise the Name, I don't need bass. I don't need piano. I am going to leave the strings in. I am going to leave the keys 1 in, and now I just have to look at the different guitar parts and see what
1,
Rob would want to play.
2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So rhythm stuff. A little bit more rhythm. I'm probably going to leave that one in because I just like to have extra just rhythm stuff, especially when there's one guitar player. I know for a fact he's not going to want to play this lead line, so I'm going to turn that one off. And that should be about all that I need to do. So I've customized these tracks for the different instrumentalists. Again, sometimes I might pull in completely different tracks based on what key things are in or what songs people are playing. But since they're all the same, I've just turned everything on and off. I'm going to save it. And now I'm going to collect all and save. I want files from everywhere. And it is going to pull in all of my files. Those are all of my guide cues. And then it's going to start pulling in all of my tracks, all of my pads and everything else. Now, from here, I'm just going to go open recent and do the exact same thing to my Cherry Hill folder, my Cherry Hill live set. I'm just going to edit all the different instruments, change what needs to be changed, turn things on and off. But for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to show you that. But that's essentially it, right? I've taken all of my tracks, I put them in, I made them look pretty, I made them functional, I routed every single instrument to my 4 kind of bus outputs here. I've got all my scenes laid out properly according to the service elements that I'm going to have. I've repeated things indefinitely so that I don't have to worry about them. And that's basically it. So at this point, Dropbox is up to date. It's already sent everything up that I need. And when I turn on any one of my track computers, that live set and all of its files will show up on it. So at this point, I'm good. I'm done. I just, if those computers are here, I would open them up, make sure everything's working properly. But that's about it. If some of that didn't make sense to you, and you're here at Kingsway with me, let me know. We can go over it in more detail. But hopefully this is helpful to you guys to understand not only how to make these, but how they function, and how things are set up, so that if you have to mess with them for any service or any reason, that you're just that much more comfortable. So thanks, guys. Happy tracking.